In the early morning hours of April 12, 1981, a quiet mountain town in Northern California woke up to a nightmare. Inside a small resort cabin in Keddie, 3 bodies lay bound and butchered in the living room. A 4th victim, a 12-year-old girl, was missing. What happened inside that house would remain one of California's most disturbing, unsolved murders. This is the story of the Keddie Murders. Now, let's tear into it. Glenna Susan Sharp, known to friends as Sue, had been trying to rebuild her life. Born in Massachusetts in 1945, Sue separated from her husband in the late 1970s and left Connecticut with her 5 children in search of something better. She traveled west to California, settling near her brother in the small railroad town of Quincy. At first, the family lived in a tiny trailer, but by 1980, Sue managed to rent a larger place, house number 28 at the Keddie Resort, a quiet collection of cabins tucked into the Sierra Nevada mountains. Living with Sue were her children, 15-year-old John, 14-year-old Sheila, 12-year-old Tina, 10-year-old Rick, and 5-year-old Greg. It wasn't glamorous. The house sat on uneven ground and creaked in the mountain cold, but it was home. And on April 11, 1981, the day started like any other. That morning, Sue drove with Sheila and Greg to pick up Rick from baseball tryouts in Quincy. On the way back, they saw John and his friend Dana Wingate hitchhiking at the mouth of the canyon. They gave them a ride back to Keddie. A few hours later, John and Dana hitchhiked back toward Quincy, possibly to meet friends. They were seen downtown that afternoon. By evening, the household settled into its routine. Sheila planned to spend the night next door at the Seabolt family's cabin. Sue stayed home with Rick, Greg, and their friend Justin Smart, a boy who lived nearby. Tina had been watching television next door, but returned home around 9:30 p.m. That was the last time she was seen alive. What happened next would unfold in complete silence. At around 10 a.m. the next morning, Sheila returned home. When she walked inside, she found her mother, her brother John, and John's friend Dana lying dead in the living room. They were bound with tape and electrical cords. There was blood everywhere. Tina was gone. Rick, Greg, and Justin were still asleep in a bedroom, completely unharmed. Terrified, Sheila ran back to the neighbor's house. The adults pulled the younger boys out through a window, but before police arrived, a neighbor entered the home to check for survivors, possibly contaminating the crime scene. From the very beginning, mistakes were being made. The murders were brutal. 2 bloody knives and a hammer were found inside the cabin. Blood spatters showed the attacks happened in the living room. Sue was found nude from the waist down, gagged with a bandana and her own underwear. She had been stabbed in the chest. Her throat was slashed so deeply it cut through her voice box and nicked her spine. A BB gun butt had been smashed into her head. John's throat was slashed. Dana had been beaten and manually strangled. All 3 had been bound before they died. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't random. It was controlled, personal, and terrifying. Despite the violence, nobody nearby reported hearing screams. The family next door, including Sheila, heard nothing. Only one couple reported muffled screaming around 1:15 a.m. How 3 people could be tortured and murdered in a tiny cabin without waking the children or alerting neighbors has never been fully explained. Tina Sharp was nowhere to be found. Police initially believed she had been abducted. Search teams combed the area. The FBI briefly joined the investigation, but quietly withdrew weeks later, saying local authorities were doing enough. For 3 years, Tina remained missing. Then, on April 11, 1984, exactly 3 years after the murders, a bottle collector found part of a human skull in the forest near Feather Falls, more than 60 miles away. It was Tina. An anonymous caller later phoned police identifying the remains, but the call was never logged and was later found buried in an evidence box. Attention soon focused on Martin Smart, Justin's stepfather. He lived nearby. He claimed a claw hammer had gone missing from his home. Justin gave conflicting stories about that night, even saying he had dreamed parts of the murders. Under hypnosis, he later said he saw Sue with 2 men. Police created suspect sketches, but used an untrained volunteer instead of professional FBI artists. The sketches were nearly useless. Rumors spread of cult rituals and drug trafficking, but no drugs were found. Years later, a disturbing detail emerged. Shortly after the murders, Martin Smart moved to Reno, Nevada. There he wrote a letter to his wife that included the chilling line, "I've paid the price of your love, and now I've bought it with 4 people's lives." Investigators say the letter was ignored. A counselor also later claimed Smart confessed to killing Sue and Tina, but said he had nothing to do with the boys. According to the counselor, Tina was killed because she witnessed the attack. Another man in the neighboring cabin was John Bubiday. He allegedly had ties to organized crime in Chicago. He died in 1988. No charges were ever filed against either man. In 2016, a hammer was found submerged in a nearby pond, matching the one Smart said went missing. Investigators believed it had been intentionally placed there. Then in 2018, authorities announced DNA from tape used at the crime scene matched a known living suspect. But no name was released, no arrest followed. In 2004, house number 28 was demolished. The place where the murders happened no longer exists. But the story remains. 4 people died, 3 children survived in the same house. 1 girl vanished and was found years later in the woods, and the case was mishandled from the start. Evidence contaminated, leads ignored, confessions overlooked. The Keddie murders aren't just about who did it. They're about what happens when small-town justice meets big-time violence. They're about a mother who tried to protect her children, and children who slept through a massacre. And they're about a 12-year-old girl who knew something and paid for it with her life. Somewhere out there, someone knows exactly what happened in House 28, and until that truth comes out, the Keddie murders remain one of the darkest, unsolved crimes in American history. Thanks for watching.